got to talk. I got to tell what I feel. I got to talk about my life as I see it.
Yo, I'm built on nonsense, and we're gonna start this episode where we left off from the last one. Let me be real. When you work overtime in the UK, in the US, Canada, and you send £200 or you think you send £200 back home, your family receives even less every time. As I said before, the gap is not accidental. It's a business model. In the last episode, we went over the global average cost to send money is 6.5%. And if we're sending money to sub-Saharan Africa, that's 8.8%. This isn't just a small fee. You know, point blank, global remittances are at 905 billion. Remittances to low and middle income countries are expected to rise to 685 billion. You know, that's bigger than any foreign investment or aid combined. So that means we, the diaspora, are not a simple side character. We are a major financial engine, but we're sending money scattered, mostly for survival, through systems that take their cut along the way. This episode is about turning that scattered money into coordinated money. If we can coordinate 1 to 5% of global remittances sent to our country regions, we can begin to build our nations. You know why I care? This is personal. You know, I've watched people do the right thing over and over again and still stay struggling. And now I'm watching the diaspora do something even bigger. We're holding up countries, holding entire households, entire economies without anybody noticing. We can organize ourselves for a holiday. We can organize ourselves for a funeral. But when it comes to building back home, we stay individual. We stay reactive. This is why we look strong in numbers, but weak in our results. Speaking of, let's talk numbers. Remittances sent to sub-Saharan Africa, remember what I said in the last episode, was about 56 billion. And Latin America and the Caribbean is at 163 billion. That is not some small change. And the reason I'm saying this is because so many people talk like we're powerless. But the numbers, they don't lie. If you want to see how deep this goes, just look at the Caribbean. The data shows Jamaica's remittances are at 16.2% of its GDP. And in Haiti, it's 16.3% of its GDP, recorded in 2024. Diaspora money isn't just helping out, it's holding up the structure. Families survive because the diaspora is filling gaps that institutions should be filling. And this is no disrespect to anybody who sends home. You know, I get it. That's love. That's duty. But remember, love can be structured. Love can be productive. Right now, remittance money is survival money. Rent, medicine, school fees, emergencies, food. You send money because you can't watch your people suffer. But survival money doesn't automatically build power stations, factories, food processing, housing stock, credit systems. The country stays fragile while our families stay afloat. That's the cycle. The diaspora becomes the emergency service of the homeland. And the system likes that because emergency mode keeps us sending instead of building. You know, I'm about to say a couple words, and the UN has set a target globally to get remittances below 3%. Yet the World Bank's own monitoring systems shows we are way above that, especially when sending to sub-Saharan Africa. And the World Bank remittances prices worldwide site says if we were to cut global costs by at least 5% a year, can save up to 16 billion. Now that's a joke thing. 16 billion? 16 billion a year? Billions that could be building cities. Billions that could be building clinics, cold storage, processing units, cooperatives, land purchases, and we're losing it to the fat cats taking their profit in the middle. That's not just the cost of doing business. That's daylight robbery, making the rich richer. I want you to understand that 1,000 people sending money separately is like a drop in the ocean. 1,000 people buying one asset is power. Scattered money, it keeps households alive. Coordinated money builds nations. Because the game is not about who works harder. The game is who pulls capital and deploys it with discipline. That is what banks do. That is what states do. That is what every serious group does when they want power. And I get anyone who says we can't trust each other, because trust is not a normal human personality trait. I get that. But trust can be governance, rules, audits, receipts, multiple signatures, public ledgers, and consequences. Diaspora finances already exist as a serious tool. The World Bank's diaspora bonds paper states that Israel and India have been able to raise 35 to 40 billion using diaspora bonds. That same paper references India's resurgent India bonds, which raised 4.2 billion in 1998, and Indian millennial bonds, which rose 5.5 billion in the year 2000. So nobody tell me that diaspora mobilization can't happen. It already has. It's already worked. The difference is we haven't treated it like a long-term muscle in our communities. Now, this is where I'm gonna be blunt. We already have pooling culture. The Caribbean Partner, which was a traditional community-based rotating savings and credit association, the ROSCA, which was essential for financial inclusion for the Windrush generation in the UK, and West Africa rotating savings. People know how to collect, how to rotate, how to contribute. But too often that pot becomes consumption and not ownership. Even in Britain, there's documented history of credit unions founded by Caribbean migrants in the 1960s as a response to discrimination to mainstream banking. So I beg you, stop saying we can't organize. We can. We just haven't disciplined the organizing into permanent assets. Now, let me show you how this connects to real wealth, using one of the clearest examples on earth. Global Review notes that the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, and Ghana together account for 60% of the world's market. But the money isn't in the raw bean. The money is in processing and the finished product. I was able to lay out the chain clearly. Raw beans, then semi-finished products, that's your butter, your powder, then industrial chocolate, then finished chocolate products. So here's my point. If you export raw, you earn the smallest margin. If you process, you earn more. If you brand and distribute, you earn the most. Now look at what Ghana is doing today and why it matters. From the 2026 to 2027 crop, Ghana has pledged a minimum of 50% of beans will be processed locally, and that the remainder of the beans for 2025 and 2026 will be distributed for domestic processing. This is Ghana's way of owning its value chain, because value chain is where sovereignty lies. And that is the lesson for diaspora money. Right now, we're sending raw cash in drops, paying fees along the way, and then it gets consumed for survival. We need to evolve, my people. We need to move our own money up the chain, from transfers to assets, from survival to production. If you want another brutal example, it's oil. What's going on now? It's fucking crazy, bruv. If you want another brutal example, that's oil. Nigeria is a major oil producer, and yet for years remained heavily reliant on imported refined fuel due to underinvestment in national refineries. But now, the Dangote refinery has begun to process gasoline and is designed to meet 100% of Nigeria's domestic refined product needs. That's petrol, diesel, even jet fuel. And it still produces a surplus for export. That's what added value looks like in real life. If you export raw and import finished, you pay more and stay dependent. So when I say that coordinated money builds nations, I'm not talking out of pride. I'm talking about cutting dependency at the points that's making us weak, at the points where dependency is hurting our nations the most. The food sector, energy, housing, finance, production capabilities. Now it's time for me to give you guys a solution to this problem. Because in my eyes, this solution can work. We just have to stay disciplined. Because all this energy without the method is nonsense. So listen, this is how we start building. First, let's talk percentages. World Bank estimates Sub-Saharan Africa's remittances sent in 2024 at 56 billion. 1% of that is 560 million a year. 5% of that is 2.8 billion a year. Latin America and the Caribbean is set at 163 billion in 2024. 1% of that is 1.63 billion, and 5% is 8.15 billion every year. I've said this in the last video. Nobody is coming to build our futures for us. So we're going to need to build it ourselves. The diaspora has been funding everybody's economy except for our own. This ends now. We need to position ourselves correctly. If you don't understand what's happening in the world to this day, without sovereignty, you'll just stay clogging somebody else's machine. And yes, I have energy for this, because I'm tired of my people telling me that Africa, the Caribbean, the 6 regions are not worth investing in. But they go through day to day, living in England, living in USA, and we're still here trying to build their nations? This is nonsense. Sovereignty isn't just a feeling, it's deeds and titles, it's supply chains. Right now, the diaspora already has power. The money is there, the reach is there. What's missing is a system that turns scattered support into permanent ownership back home. That's what I'm building. I'm using this platform to coordinate diaspora energy into real projects in Jamaica, Africa, and South America. Real projects, real documentation, real assets. I'm talking about a method that starts now and scales because it's controlled. So let me be clear so there's no confusion. What I'm doing is building an accountable, documented pipeline where support turns into visible results. But right now, this is how it works. Everything is transparent. Every phase is documented. Money in, money out, who was paid, what was built, and what was produced. If I say irrigation, you'll see irrigation. If I say land preparation, you'll see the land and the paperwork. If I say food production, you'll see it running. No mystery, no money in the dark. And I'm not pretending that every step will be perfect. If something fails, it doesn't get hidden. It gets shown, corrected, and tightened. That's leadership. That's how systems get built. We start with a pilot. One location, one project, one timeline. Small enough to control, real enough to matter. Then we scale. Repetition is what turns an idea into infrastructure. I'm traveling because sovereignty can't be built from a distance. You don't build ownership from a comment section. You build it on the ground with locals, with documents, with logistics, with reality. With the right backing, I'm planning my trip to these places we keep talking about. I'm gonna map the gaps, verify what's true, and build the first working model. Then I'm gonna show it publicly. So nobody has to imagine what's happening. It's there. This is what success looks like. Land secured, water secured, food produced, skills trained, local income created. A repeatable model that the diaspora can tap into without asking anybody for permission. Because sovereignty isn't a speech, it's an engine. If you've been waiting for direction, this is it. If you've been tired of watching money leak into everything except ownership, this is it. If you want to see diaspora power become something that stays, this is it. Support the build, watch the proof, and hold me to the standard. Sovereignty doesn't just arrive, it gets constructed. Today, I feel like I've spoken about some good points and strategies, so let me close it in a way you won't forget. The diaspora is not poor or powerless. It's one of the biggest financial forces on earth, with 905 billion moving through migrant hands. And these are just the most recent numbers in 2024, and only expected to rise. The system skims it by 6.5% and 8.8% for sub-Saharan Africa. And this is before your family even sees it. So the question is not, nor has ever been, do we have the power? The question is, do we keep being individuals while everyone else behaves like institutions? Because institutions win every time. Our people need more than just an ATM. Our people needs a country that works. Remember, scattered money keeps us surviving. Coordinated money builds nations. And once we build, we don't need to beg nobody for nothing. You don't overthrow systems. You outgrow them. If you are diaspora watching this, comment your country and the city you're in. Then answer this for me. What would you build first? Land, housing, food, or processing? If we can organize conversation, we can organize capital. Stop sending money like we're at the end of our story. Start building like it's the beginning.